Hey everyone and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe, where today we're taking a look at update 21.7. It's brought 3 brand new spanking new Corpus weapons. We're going to start off though with the newest primary weapon on the block, the long awaited Corpus pump jack and shotgun, the Arca Plasmor. Currently you can get the Arca Plasmor from the dojo from the Corpus lab. The requirements aren't too terrible. It's kind of high on the salvage from a newer clan or a newer player perspective, but realistically most clans with players that have played even a little while will have more than enough salvage to cover the cost. As of right now though, I don't know the build requirements, so I can't really say whether it's going to be cheap or expensive, or if it's going to require another weapon or not. I actually have no idea right now, sadly. However, when it is built, you get a pump action shotgun dealing 600 pure radiation damage. That's a very meaty amount of base damage, plus with it being radiation, this means that basically the base elements that normally go into radiation, you can put them onto the weapon separately without it combining into that base damage, and that means you free up the use of mods like Blaze, which normally would go straight into radiation, or would combine with, say, a toxin thing on the weapon and would create gas. But from there, the stats keep getting better. 22% critical chance, 1.6 times multiplier actually makes it only the second shotgun where crit is realistically viable, even if the multiplier is a little lower than we would normally see on a crit weapon. The status chance of 28% also makes it worth looking into for a status build. Now I can hear some people go, headshot, you always say status isn't worth it on a shotgun. And while that's true for the most part, since status is split between pellets, which is why in a conventional shotgun, status is actually way lower than it appears on the stat screen, on the Plasmor, this isn't an issue. It only has a single pellet, so that status chance isn't split at all. It functions more like a rifle than any of the other shotguns, so status works just fine. In fact, it works brilliantly on it. Now, it does actually have a couple of special features that you don't get from the stats. First of which is that it has something like a 2 meters worth of punch through on it. However, only if it's punching through enemies or corpses. If the projectile hits a solid surface like a door, it's going to dissipate and it's not going to go through. So it's kind of punch through, but also not punch through at the same time. The projectile, though, does have a couple of guaranteed status procs on it, which is amazing. You get both an impact proc and a radiation proc on any enemy that isn't killed outright by the projectile. The impact proc, however, only works if you're within 15 meters of a target, but since this is a shotgun and most things are close quarters in Warframe, honestly that's likely to be most of the time. It's got a couple of downsides though, as you would expect with a weapon that's got so much potential as the Plasmor. The reload speed of 2.8 seconds is definitely not the quickest, something that you really do feel, especially with a small magazine size of just 6. You're going to be reloading it fairly often, although with a fire rate of just 1.1 rounds a second means that it's not a quick thing to empty the magazine in the first place, so fire rate might be worth looking into, although then you run into the reload problem. So it's going to be a balancing act between these two downsides, which is what powerful weapons should have. Force you to think about things, make sacrifices, either usability versus damage, or damage for making the weapon feel better. Now, talking about builds, I actually took quite a while to decide on my final build. It ended up being a 2-former one. I added 2 Vs to the 2 Vs that are already on the weapon. I slotted in the usual mods, Prime Point Blank Hell's Chamber. I got Blunderbuss in there for crit chance, Prime Ravage for crit damage, 2 Jill stats, and Blaze. For this you can run a few different status combinations. I love Viral and Heat personally, which makes it insane against Grineer. Radiation, Viral, and Heat against them is a crazy combo. But you could also do Corrosive, Radiation, and Cold, which is also a fantastic combo. The fact that Radiation is already a combined elemental means we can use single elements without worrying about them combining into the base damage of the weapon, and it really allows us to customize for each faction. The final mod though was one that I took quite a while to work out and test. I tested another elemental, Laser Sights, the Cleanse faction mods, Seeking Fury, Shrapnel Shot, and even Vicious Spread. All of these are definitely viable options, however I settled on Laser Sights personally. The way the shot works means that you can hit headshots super easily, so the mod is always procced, and it allows you to get way more consistent crits, and it pushes your damage output way higher than any of the other mods I found. I decided against Vicious Spread because while it doesn't happen every time, far too often the multi-shot created by Hell's Chamber will go off in a random direction nowhere near the target, and that really hurts the damage of the weapon on single targets, and as such I decided against using it. So, what do I think of the Arca Plasmor? Well, honestly, this thing is pretty freaking epic. As a room clearer, this thing is fantastic. The projectile passes through enemy after enemy, spreading status on anything it doesn't kill, which honestly isn't going to be very much until you start getting to higher levels. Watching a whole bunch of enemies try and rush you, and you put a single shot through the entire group and annihilate them all, it's so satisfying, it's unreal. The weapon itself is, I mean, it looks incredible. It looks like a beast, yet while remaining very corpus looking. Mad props to the designer for this one. They've knocked it out the park. I think it's one of the best looking weapons in the game alongside the lens. The only downside of this weapon for me, to be honest, for a pump action shotgun, it doesn't really feel like one. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't have that feeling for me. Maybe it's because of the lack of pellets, makes it not really feel like a shotgun. Or the fact it's firing a projectile with an AoE makes it kind of not feeling like a sort of pump action kind of feel. I'm not saying that's a bad thing because it still feels awesome, but it just doesn't feel like a pump action to me. The one thing I do have to laugh about though is how much more interesting these three weapons are that came out when combined to the primes. Every single one of them has a really interesting anacode mechanic behind them, whereas the primes felt kind of bland when compared to these. It's amazing. I've been way more excited for the primes if they had mechanics like these weapons do. It's something I hope we get more of in the future for the primes, but, you know, we'll see on that. But if you like shotguns, if you like clearing hordes of enemies, and you love the way this looks, you are going to get along well with the Arca Plasmor. It's definitely going to be worth building. It's worth sticking the former into. It's a fantastic weapon, and one that I like a lot. I genuinely don't think you'll be disappointed by it. So I hope you enjoyed my look at the Arca Plasmor. Videos for the other three weapons that came this week coming in the next few days. But for now, many thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next video.